Hello, everyone. It's Gabaguy. So this morning, this is just a short, I don't know if it's a rant or just some thoughts. Uh, I understand the inclination that people have to want to respond to the recent terrorist attacks with anger. I mean, it makes me angry. I think for me personally, I think it makes me more sad than it makes me angry. But I certainly understand that response. Um, there's a natural inclination to want to just blast the terrorists to kingdom come and just bomb the tar out of them. The reality is that, at least from what I gather, that's exactly the kind of reaction that the terrorists are trying to invoke. These people, these extremist people, clearly don't value their own lives. So the thought of dropping bombs on them and attacking them, retaliating with violence, is not something that they're going to be worried about. They ran into buildings with vests, with the intention of blowing themselves up and taking out as many other people as they can. They don't value life, and responding by retaliating with violence against them is playing into their hands. What they do then, because inevitably some of our bombs from the West will hit unintended targets, and and there's nothing that makes better recruitment videos for these terrorist groups than showing schools and hospitals and children who have been hit by bombs from the West. And what makes really lousy terrorist videos is welcoming people who have been victims of terrorism in their own country, Syrian refugees, into our Western countries, even if that means risking some violence. And I think that there are ways that we can mitigate that risk. But reacting with fear and anger and hatred is exactly what the terrorists want. We did it after 9/11, and guess what? It didn't make any terrorists go away. We destabilized their governments, which allows for them to recruit more and pull more people in. It really just strengthens them. They don't pose any existential threat to any of our Western democracies. As tragic and horrible as it is that someone can walk into a restaurant or a theater or what have you, a public space, and cause death and destruction, that's not going to shake our government. That's not going to threaten our liberty. What could potentially threaten our liberty and our stable democracies is if we get involved in wars that can be used to propagate this idea and foster the idea that it's the West against Islam. That's what they want. Because, you know, a handful of terrorists don't pose any threat to us. The West against Islam, that becomes a more serious threat. And and it doesn't have to be that way. Most Muslims, the majority of Muslims, do not support these kinds of acts. And and it's exposure to our Western democracies, exposure to the liberty and exchange of ideas that will be the biggest threat to terrorists. I mentioned this in the last video, or the second to last video, another recent video that I recorded the other day. There's a fellow who kind of either he is a person that is associated with some kind of Islamic extremist group, or he's trying to become that. I don't know where he's at in that process, but I mean, he posts photos of violence that are not just from the news; they are from firsthand photos of violent acts, and he endorses them. But he goes by Al-Sham, and he has refused to engage with me. He has refused to have conversations with me, and he posted something, you know, to the effect that he was told by people who are above him in whatever kind of organization he's in, that he shouldn't interact with me, that he should avoid me, that I'm dangerous. Well, the only danger I pose is to press and get someone to think. That's the threat. That's the real threat that the terrorists and groups like this see. It's a cult, and exposure to other ideas, exposure to questions is the biggest threat to them that we can pose. Reaching out with compassion to people who share their religion, but who don't share their dogmatic adherence to violence, that poses a threat to them, because it shows that we can distinguish between people who are bent on violence and people who are, even if we disagree with their religious views, who are our allies in that they embrace democracy and liberty. They are our allies, even if they are Muslims, even if, you know, even if they have some loose ties, loose affiliations through a religion to some people who are extremists. That's true of anyone who endorses democracy and liberty and human rights. They are our allies, and we need to start to perceive things in that light. And when we do that, then we win. Because it shouldn't be the religion. If we believe in religious freedom, and that's actually something that we believe in, then we need to embrace that in reality. If we are not about discriminating against people based on their ethnicity or based on their heritage, based on the region that they're from, or based on their religion, then we need to stand up and actually, you know, put our money where our mouth is, and and act accordingly. Practice what we preach. That's what's going to make bad videos for terrorist recruiters. We can tighten up security. We can legally pursue, just as we would any other criminals, the people who are within our borders. We can put sanctions against other governments that support terrorism, and make life miserable for them to the extent that we can do that, until they either are deposed by more democratic, or at the very least by governments that don't support terrorist organizations. We can do those things, and all of those things are going to go against what the terrorists want from us, because it makes it more difficult for them to attack us if we have higher security, and just people being alert. If you see a group of people come in with all wearing heavy coats or something like that, draw it to the attention of authorities, draw it to the attention of security in public spaces. We can take steps to protect ourselves. They don't have jet planes, fleets of jet planes, or massive amounts of high power munitions or artillery and weapons of mass destruction. If they did, they would be using them. What they have are guns and makeshift explosive things, and it's scary, but we don't. Like I said, it doesn't pose an existential threat to our government or to the stability of our societies, and we should not respond to it as if it was. This is not an act of war; it's an act of terrorism, and we should not respond by declaring war. Just like we've had acts of terrorism, domestic terrorism in our country. We didn't declare war on whatever city or town or county or state that Timothy McVeigh was from when he, blasted up the federal building in Oklahoma City. We made arrests. We did investigations. And we put an end. We held the people who were responsible, directly responsible, accountable, and for the other people who might have had loose associations ideologically or whatever with that individual, or the couple of individuals who may have helped him carry those acts out. We didn't prosecute unless there was evidence. This is what our criminal justice system is about. And when we have criminals who are carrying out criminal acts of violence, prosecute them to the full extent of the law. Don't declare war. Don't send out bombs that could injure innocent people who are not affiliated with these groups. There are children over there, just like we didn't bomb Timothy McVeigh's house even. Imagine, if the government sent out jet planes to bomb the Unabomber or Timothy McVeigh or something like that, that would be such overkill. And even though these groups there's clearly more to them than the lone terrorists like Timothy McVeigh or the Unabomber. They have training camps and it's more sophisticated in things like that. It's not that far removed. It's much closer to the lone domestic terrorists than it is to states As much as ISIS wants to be considered an Islamic state, they are not a state. They do not have, government uh, provisions and things like that. They're just an isolated group that's trying to flex their muscles and be more than what they are, or look like they're more than what they are. They're nothing to us, and we shouldn't respond in ways that suggest that they are more than what they are. So that's all I've got to say on this. I've ended up being a bit more rambly than I'd hoped, but those are my thoughts on this. I really hope that we do not respond with our military might to this group of gnats and flies, because that's what they want. And in the end, we always end up stirring up hornets' nests, and with unintended consequences. New leaders, after we depose a bad guy, we end up putting in place another bad guy. It's a matter of doing what we can to expose people to our way of life. That's what makes the change. When relatives come here and they experience liberty and democracy, when they don't have to fear being tortured, when their daughters can go to school and get an education and have careers, and they report back to their families who are still in these other countries, yeah, that's what makes a difference. That's how the world changes. And that's what we need to do. My 2 cents. Feel free to comment and respond below. Thanks for watching.